Welcome into this edition of Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Joe Hamilton, along with Scott Tobin. Scott, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Joe. How are you, bud?
Oh, pretty good, man. We're a day away from the tournament. Quickly, though, I want to send out my prayers to those in Alabama right now. Some nasty storms going through. So you just pull through. You guys will be all right. Just some nasty times. Have you seen some of the storms going on down there?
Yeah, it's happening all over the South. Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi. They're all kind of in the path of some pretty nasty storms, potential tornadoes. There's kind of a tornado outbreak going on down that way. It's that time of the year, unfortunately. So, yeah, I hope everybody takes cover and stays safe.
Yeah, stay safe, everyone. That's for sure. There were a lot of big moves going down today. Scott, first of all, before we go through any of these moves in the NFL, did you see this coming? Did you see this flurry of activity coming every day, it seems like?
Oh, this happens every year when free agency starts in the NFL. The first 3 or 4 days, this is how it goes. That's why the NFL and the NBA free agency is so different than, say, baseball, where, baseball free agency starts and you might have to wait a couple of months for something to happen. The NFL and the NBA, the big names are gone in the first couple of days. So, yeah, this happens every year. It's not anything unusual.
Why don't you take us through some of these moves, Scott?
But you throw them out there, and I'll give you your reaction. How about that? Let's go that way.
All right. Yeah, let's go that way. Let's talk first. Patrick Peterson to Minnesota. 1 year, $10 million. This was shocking, to say the least. I thought he would stay in Arizona. Didn't really think of him going anywhere else. There were no rumors about him going anywhere else. What is your reaction to this?
Yeah, I'm surprised. There was some talk, a couple of months ago that he may move on from Arizona. But, yeah, it's a shocker because I really liked what Arizona had done up to this point, bringing in J.J. Watt, going out and getting A.J. Green, making moves to make that team better. But to lose a guy like Patrick Peterson, that's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer, that's kind of a big loss for that Arizona defense in my mind.
Well, talk about that A.J. Green signing for the Arizona Cardinals, because that gives them a pretty stacked receiving core, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it gives you another really legitimate threat to go along with DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, A.J. Green's not the guy he was 4 or 5 years ago. He's gotten a little old.
He's a complimentary guy.
Yeah, he's lost a step or two, but he's still a good number 2 in that system. So, yeah, it definitely gives them more weapons, and Arizona's going to be tough in the NFC West.
Arizona's definitely going to be tough. Kyle Long goes to Kansas City on a 1-year deal worth up to $5 million. They needed to bolster their offensive line, and I think this goes a long way into doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the second move we've seen. It's the second signing on that offensive line we've seen them make in the last 2 days, 2 big moves. And Kyle Long retired last year, didn't play at all, but he's a 3-time Pro Bowler, and, everybody in St. Louis knows his brother Chris pretty well, and, of course, we all know his Hall of Fame dad Howie. So football definitely runs deep in those bloodlines. So it'll be good to see what Kyle Long does in Kansas City.
It will be good, and I think it makes that Kansas City team that much better. If they had any issues, Scott, it would have to be offensive line. I mean, especially losing the 2 tackles they did in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is running for his life. You need to bolster that, especially losing the 2 guys you did.
Yeah, you have to shore up that offensive line, and now they got to work on their defense, because their defense definitely needs some upgrades as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether they do anything there in free agency or if they address that in the draft.
I got 2 more, Scott. I think there are more than that. Maybe you can clue me in on a couple of them. John Brown to the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, he's lost a little bit, but it's still of note. Signed a 1-year deal worth up to $5.5 million. And Curtis Samuel went to the Washington football team. 3 years at $34.5 million. Quickly, your reaction to those.
John Brown to the Raiders. John Brown hasn't really been a big factor in the NFL. Since that first year with Arizona, he's kind of bounced around a little bit. He was in Baltimore for a while. He was in Buffalo. He's probably a number 3. He's a threat, but not anything that's like an earth-shattering move. It's just another guy to add to your receiving core. as far as Samuel going to the Redskins, that's a good move for them. It gives them another solid wide receiver for Fitzpatrick to throw to. And like I told you the other day, I think that Washington football team wins the NFC East.
And I think they're over 500, though. I don't think this is a team that's going to finish under 500 with the weapons around them. Now, it'll be interesting to see what they do at quarterback, but this is a good start.
Fitzpatrick. They signed Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Do you think Ryan Fitzpatrick leads the team to 10 wins at this point in his career, at least?
Yeah, he was doing it at Miami before they decided to pull him for some reason and make Tua the quarterback.
Yeah, but Scott, before you say anything, I remember talking to Wags about this same situation, and Wags said, and I'm going to somewhat quote him here, what is Ryan Fitzpatrick known for? 3 or 4 good games in his status of his career right now, and then he goes down to shitter. Do you think if he wasn't pulled there in Miami, he would have been what they needed?
Yeah, he was leading them all through the season, and then when Tua got hurt and had to miss a game, he came out and won that game too. Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick can lead a team, especially a team like Washington that's got such a good defense. I mean, he doesn't have to do a whole lot on this team. This might be the best team that Ryan Fitzpatrick's played on in a long time. You've got a running back, you've got a defense. He's just got to be kind of a game manager and not make mistakes. And this Washington team, especially in that division, can win it, I really believe.
Yeah, I really think so, Scott. Do you think it's going to be as bad of a division as it has been?
I mean, it wasn't that bad of a division until this year. Everybody just had a horrible year this year.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think it'll continue?
Dallas is going to be better, probably. We'll see what Dak is able to do if he's able to be healthy. They still have to fix that defense. The Giants are going to be better. They were better last year than people thought they were going to be. They were in the hunt. I mean, not that anybody was great in that division, but they were right there in the hunt for first place. And you get Saquon Barkley back. If they add a couple of pieces, they could be right back in the hunt. And Philadelphia is going to get some people back. I don't know what Jalen Hurts is as a quarterback, but that division as a whole, none of those teams are going to play as poorly as they did last year. They'll all be improved.
Even Dallas?
Yeah, I just said that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I am listening.
With Dak back, they'll be better. I'm not sure they're going to be great, but they'll be better.
You'd hope. I mean, there's always so much hype going into a Dallas Cowboys season, and for good reason, to be honest, because you have all of those weapons at your disposal with CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Zeke Elliott. Hopefully he has a bounce back year with Dak. So if he has a bounce back year, Scott, I think Ezekiel Elliott is the main key for, the Cowboys having any success.
Well, what do I talk about all the time? You have to be able to play defense, and that's been the Cowboys' biggest problem. Even when Dak was healthy, they could score points. But look at all the games last year, even last year before Dak got hurt. Remember all those games that the Cowboys had big leads, and then the next thing you knew, you turned around and they were getting blown out, or they would get down early by 28 points or 35 points, and then they'd have to try to make a comeback like crazy to try to get back in that game. You have to be able to play defense to be able to win, and that's my biggest question about the Cowboys. I just don't know that their defense is good enough.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see. Hopefully we get a better division in the NFC East because, frankly, that was bad. I mean, if you had one picture to sum up the NFC East last year, it had to be Daniel Jones falling before the end zone. Doesn't that picture clearly sum up the East for you?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent. Yeah, it just wasn't a good year in that division. But like I said, I expect it to be better this year. Yeah,
so, Scott, any other signings before we move on to a bigger story in the NFL?
Those are the biggest ones today. And then there were a couple of rumors about the moves that didn't happen. We heard about the reported offer that the Bears made for Russell Wilson that Seattle supposedly turned down and told him that he wasn't available, which was basically their first-round pick this year, 2 more first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 starters, which Seattle said no thank you to. So the Bears made a move that I don't think excites anybody that's a Bears fan. They couldn't get Russell Wilson, so they went out and signed Andy Dalton to a $10 million a year contract to be their quarterback. And I don't understand that move because we saw what Andy Dalton did in Dallas. I mean, I know he came in the middle of the season, but with the weapons that you keep talking about in Dallas that he had all around him, they did basically nothing with Andy Dalton.
Scott, you were excited too, though. You said they were going to win some games. I remember talking. I remember talking to you last year during the season.
Never excited about Andy Dalton going to Dallas.
Yeah, but you said with those weapons, he'll be able to win you some games, and he didn't.
I don't think I said that. I think Wags said that. I think Wags, I said
okay.
I think Wags might have said that. No, I talked about the fact that their defense was awful, and I didn't think it was going to take Andy Dalton too long to figure stuff out. And then going to Chicago, if he couldn't figure it out in Dallas and couldn't put up points with that offense in Dallas, what gives you any hope that he's going to go to Chicago that has no weapons and be able to do anything?
I agree because Chicago has literally nobody, and I feel bad for Allen Robinson at this point. So that package that you mentioned earlier for that they offered for Wilson, isn't that the same kind of package that Deshaun Watson would get Deshaun Watson from the Texans? Or pretty close to that?
Well, they said they wanted 3 or 4 first-round picks and 2 or 3 starters on defense, and and that's all speculation. Nobody knows what Houston wants because Houston still says they're not trading him. So I don't think anybody has any idea what it's going to take to get Deshaun Watson, and I still don't think he gets moved.
Yeah, and I really don't think he gets moved now. He's been accused of sexual assault in a new lawsuit. Scott, talk about this one because this is nuts. When I saw this tweet, it was like, this is nuts.
Yeah, apparently he was at a massage parlor and was getting a massage, getting worked out, and apparently the woman said that he touched her inappropriately with a part of his body. She says that, it was unwanted. Deshaun came out today and strongly said that, nothing happened and accused the woman, said that her lawyer reached out and wanted a settlement, before they were willing to take a cash settlement and not go to court or do anything. So that right there makes you question whether anything legitimately happened anytime they immediately go to somebody like that and say, hey, we're going to accuse you of something, but we'll go away if you give us a bunch of money. It makes you question the legitimacy of that claim. And that's what Deshaun's saying. It's just an effort to get money out of him, and he's going to prove his innocence. So, I don't know how much it affects him being traded or not, but it's definitely not something that he wanted to deal with right now.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. It'll be interesting because after these allegations, I don't think any team's going to want to take him on at all.
Well, again, you have to look into the fact that if there's any truth to those allegations, and there's a lot of questions about whether there are, and there'll be teams that are still interested. No team's it's not going to scare too many teams off because, again, first of all, we don't know that there's any legitimacy to it. Second of all, even if it goes to trial, who knows what happens there. So there are enough as talented as Deshaun Watson is, we've seen players have a lot bigger legal problems and still get moved, still get signed. If somebody's really interested, this is not going to scare them off from Deshaun Watson. I still don't know that Houston wants to make a move. And, I even heard a rumor, and this is all speculation, but I heard a reporter say, how do we know that Houston's management didn't fabricate this whole thing, trying to tarnish Deshaun's reputation to get teams not be interested, so there was even less of a chance of them having to trade him. So there's going to be a lot of stuff come out and a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation. But, again, before we rush to judgment, let's let it all play out and see where it goes.
Is this more than a Bill O'Brien screw job in terms of Deshaun Watson in Houston? Is this more? Is there more of a screw job other than the direction of Bill O'Brien? Is there something more to this, or is this just a Bill O'Brien screw job?
Well, no, this doesn't have anything to do with Bill O'Brien because he was not around. That organization is definitely a mess from top to bottom. But again, like I said, without really knowing all of the facts, we're in the early stages of this, so let's let it play out and see which way it goes.
My whole thing, Scott, I'm talking about his reputation there already. They want to get him out of there. Apparently, he's been painted in a bad light before this even happened, Scott. He was painted in a bad light there. Bill O'Brien and him didn't see eye to eye. Was this more? Go ahead.
No, because Houston doesn't want to get rid of him. Houston wants to keep him. So Houston's not trying to paint him in a bad light because they want to keep him. So they're not doing anything because they want to get him out of there. They want to keep him in Houston. And so if they were doing something to tarnish his reputation, honestly, what would happen? More likely than not, it might lower the asking price, what they could get for him. So in no way does that help the Houston Texans in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I would agree with it, but I mean it's a total mess in Houston. It'll be interesting to see what happens. They did go out and pick up Tyrod Taylor, maybe for a backup role, but depending on if Deshaun Watson even plays, I mean, there's a chance he sits out. So be tuned in with us. We will get you the latest. Scott, why don't you tell people what we're going to talk about after this break?
After the break, we're going to start looking at the NCAA tournament as the play-in games start tomorrow.
So be on the lookout for that coming up on Crunch Time. Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I am Joe alongside Scott. Scott, the big dance starts tomorrow, man. How psyched are you, first of all?
It's good, man. It's March Madness. It's tournament time. So, yeah, that's exciting. Good to be happy to finally get it on the court and get it going after missing it completely last year.
Yeah, that's going to be so much fun. And, Scott, I knew they had to do a tournament this year because so much revenue comes from this basketball tournament. It's not just having fans in its stands. There's TV contracts, everything else. So this tournament had to happen. Am I right on that?
Well, I mean, they wanted it to. If it was a big risk and a lot of stuff was going to go wrong, just like last year, they would have canceled it. But yeah, for the good of college sports and the good of these kids, they wanted the tournament to go on. I'm not going to say it had to happen, but yeah, they definitely wanted to play.
Yeah, that's for sure. I filled out my bracket, Scott. What do you got, man? It's getting down to crunch time. No pun intended.
So you want my final four? Is that where we're going?
Well, I kind of want to know where you started with this. Like, are there any in the first two rounds? Are there any upsets? First of all,
yeah, I've got a couple upsets in the tournament. I've got a couple of 12 seats beating 5, stuff like that. I don't have my bracket right in front of me right now to tell you exactly where I went with every game, but I do have 4 or 5 upsets in those first couple rounds. How about yourself?
Well, I'm just going to tell you right now, I have Illinois going pretty far, if not winning at all, because this team, I think they can beat anybody. If they go up against, let's say Gonzaga does go to the Final Four or the final, Illinois can beat that team. I think Gonzaga is a little bit of the Alabama in them where their schedule was pretty weak this season. So I think if they go up against good competition like Illinois, they're gonna fall. But then again, I could see Mizzou beating them. I'm actually trying to pull up my bracket right now.
I think you told me you had Mizzou beating them.
Yeah, I had Mizzou. So round of 64, I don't want to go through it, but I will if I have to. I have Gonzaga against Missouri in the round of 32. I have Creighton against Virginia in the round of 32. I have USC and Kansas in the round of 32. And I have VCU over Iowa in the round of 32. Also, I have Michigan and St. Bonaventure is another matchup. Georgetown versus Florida. I have BYU versus Texas. UConn versus Alabama. I have Baylor versus Wisconsin. Villanova versus Purdue. And in the South, I have Texas against Arkansas. Florida against Ohio State. Illinois against Georgia Tech. And Tennessee versus Oklahoma State. In the Midwest, I have San Diego State and West Virginia, and Rutgers versus Houston. Any of those matchups you have a problem with?
No, that's pretty similar. Instead of going game to game, why don't you let's just jump and unveil what we've got in our Final Fours and see if they match up.
Yeah, let's do that. I need to figure out how to. Okay, I can do this. All right, my Final Four is Kansas versus Virginia, Michigan and Alabama, Purdue and Ohio State, and Illinois and West Virginia.
That's not your Final Four. That was like 8 teams.
Oh wait, actually that was my Elite Eight. Sorry, here it is. My Final Four is Virginia versus Alabama and Ohio State versus Illinois.
Wow, I only have one of those teams in my Final Four.
Okay, tell me, go team by team that you didn't have in there, and tell me why they won't be in there. Go ahead.
All right, go back again and tell me who you have in.
My Final Four?
Yeah, I know you have Illinois. I know you have Illinois. Who are the other 3?
Virginia, Alabama, and Ohio State.
I think, and like I said, I don't have my bracket sitting right in front of me. I'm pretty sure I had Ohio State getting knocked out in the Sweet 16. I think Ohio State and Alabama had both knocked out in the Sweet 16, and I think I had Virginia knocked out in the second round. My Final Four, just to throw it out there real quick, I have Illinois, Gonzaga, Michigan, and Arkansas in my Final Four.
Wow. So you think Illinois doesn't even make it? I mean, that team I think can play with anybody, Scott.
No, I have Illinois in my Final. Illinois is in my Final Four. Illinois, okay. Arkansas. Illinois, Arkansas, Michigan, and Gonzaga is my Final Four.
Why not Ohio State?
Because I don't think Ohio State gets there.
Bama, why not?
I think they get knocked out. I think the 3 number ones. Like I said, I think the 3 number ones in Gonzaga, Michigan, and Illinois get there, and then I think Arkansas is a strong enough team. I have Arkansas getting there to the Final Four. So I have. In my semifinal games, I have Gonzaga and Michigan and Arkansas and Illinois, and I have Gonzaga and Illinois in my finals.
Gonzaga and Illinois in your finals. I have Alabama and Illinois in my final, with Illinois winning 74-64. I think it's a high-scoring final.
I have Gonzaga and Illinois, and I actually have the score higher than that. I have Illinois winning 86-82. Both of those teams average in the mid 80s. So that's where I went.
You don't see any team defense, do you?
Oh, they still play defense. But both of those teams can score. They'll play defense against other teams, but both of those teams are high-scoring teams. So I think they will both be in the 80s because they have those kind of weapons.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Now, Scott, what are some of the guys in this tournament that are huge if their teams are going to go far in this tournament? Who are some of these guys that have to have big tournaments?
I mean, we talked about the guys at Illinois.
Yeah. I mean, obviously outside of Illinois and Mizzou.
Gonzaga's got a full team. They have about 10 different guys that can score at different points in the game. They're just a really solid ball club. Kind of the same thing with Michigan. I think Michigan's just got a solid ball club. I have a lot of faith in their coach, former Michigan Fab Five member Juwan Howard. And so I think that Michigan team is just a well-rounded team. They play smart basketball. I really like that ball club. And so I think they're in there. And then kind of the same thing with Arkansas. Arkansas's got 2 or 3 really talented guys, and they play tough defense, and they're just a gritty basketball team. And so that's where I look at it. It's not necessarily 1 or 2 guys on any of those 3 teams. I just see them being complete teams.
Yeah, and you almost need to have a complete team game to win in these tournaments. And, since we talked about the guys, the teams in the field being complete, what about Mizzou and Illinois? We know the struggles of Mizzou going into this tournament, losing 6 out of their final 7 or 8 regular season games. Illinois is coming in on a high, winning the Big Ten tournament, plus being a number 1 seed. I'm thinking you're going to say Illinois is more of a complete team than Mizzou right now.
I think you have to. I mean, Illinois is more consistent of a team. And again, Illinois has got 2 of the top 3 or 4 players in all of college basketball on that team. You know, when you've got Coburn and Io both on that team, you know, that's, like I said, that's 2 of the top 5 or 6 players in all of college basketball. Mizzou is just Mizzou can be very good. They can play with anybody. And I said this the other night. I don't think they'll beat Gonzaga. You know, I think Gonzaga will win that game. I think Mizzou beats Oklahoma, but then I think they'll play Gonzaga. I think they'll give Gonzaga a fight. I don't think Gonzaga blows them out. I think Mizzou plays them tough, and I would love to see them win, and it wouldn't shock me if Mizzou beat Gonzaga, honestly, especially if Jeremiah Tillman plays big and plays good defense at the rim and doesn't get in foul trouble. I think Mizzou can give Gonzaga all kinds of fits. But, you know, Gonzaga is undefeated. They've got the pedigree. They've played so well all year. And Mizzou's just been so inconsistent. You don't know what Mizzou team you're going to get on the field as far as shooting percentage and who's going to do what. You know, if Mizzou went into this tournament, let's say they went into this tournament 3 weeks ago when they were really rolling right after they beat Alabama and Tennessee and they really, really looked good and they were ranked 10th in the country. If they were going into the tournament then, I would have no problem picking them to upset Gonzaga. But I don't know if we're going to get that team. We may get the team that's lost 7 out of 9. So, you know, it's just hard to say. I mean, like I said, Mizzou we could be looking at Mizzou in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8, or we can see them lose in the first round to Oklahoma. I don't know what to expect.
What about guys like Xavier Pinson? I think you're way downgrading the importance of Big X.
I'm not downgrading, but he's been one of the biggest problems on this team during this stretch. He went absolutely cold and was horrible. He was shooting during this losing streak, he shot like 27% from the field. You know, you have to have him playing good basketball like he was in the first half. If he plays like he did the first half of the season, and like I said, if Tillman plays like he did in the first half of the season, and you get some shooting from the Smiths, then yeah, Mizzou can play with just about anybody. But we haven't seen that in about 4 weeks. So I don't know what team I'm going to get.
Yeah, you don't know what team you're going to get. I'd like to know if guys like Mark Smith and, you know, those guys can still have that touch from the three-point line. And, Scott, over-under in that first Mizzou game, how many three-pointers are you going over-under for both teams? How many three-point shots do you think we see?
Attempted or made?
Attempted.
Well, we know that Mizzou loves to shoot threes, and that's their downfall a lot of times is they get a lead and then they just start firing threes from everywhere. They're probably going to shoot 17 or 18 threes in this game, and Oklahoma has a tendency to do that as well, so I wouldn't be surprised total if we see somewhere around 30, 31 three-pointers put up in that game.
I would not be surprised at that number either. Now, Graham Forsyth chimes in, which, by the way, you can watch all of his shows, both of his shows here on ASTV Productions. So he's got the Zags, Michigan, Baylor, and Houston in his Final Four. He hasn't paid attention to college basketball at all this year. For not paying attention to college basketball a lot this year, Scott, what do you think of that Final Four?
It's not bad. Baylor and Houston, both good teams. I have them both in my Sweet 16. I had them both in my Sweet 16 before they get knocked out. So that's not bad, especially if you're not paying attention. And both of those teams have the potential to go on runs. So yeah, that's not a bad Final Four, honestly.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Now, Scott, I do. What makes you think that Mizzou can get past Oklahoma? There's some news that came out that maybe Mizzou can win that game.
Well, I thought Mizzou was going to win the game anyway, honestly. But Oklahoma guard Davion Harmon, who averages about 14 points a game, is their second leading scorer, tested positive for COVID. And so he's going to miss the first 2 rounds of the tournament. So that's a big loss for Oklahoma. And so, like I said, while I thought Mizzou had a good shot of winning that game, that's going to put a big dent into what they can do offensively. The rest of those guys on that team are going to have to step up to make up for that 13.8 points per game he averaged. He also averaged about 5 rebounds and 4 assists. So they're going to have to find a way to make up for his absence. And Missouri's got to be able to take advantage of that. And I think it's going to be a good game. I really do. And like I said, a lot of people have Oklahoma winning. I think they're favored by 3. But I think Mizzou pulls that win and advances. And I think we see Mizzou and Gonzaga. I guess that would be on Monday.
Yeah, that would be on Monday. And that would be a nerve-wracking game for me because, facing a number 1 seed. I mean, granted, there's a reason why we haven't seen a number 1 seed, an overall number 1 seed do anything in these tournaments in a long time. I mean, in terms of winning this. When's the last time an overall number 1 seed won this tournament, Scott? Has there been one?
Yeah, there's been one. It's been 9 or 10 years, I think, since the last time the overall number 1 seed won one. And, go back and watch Mizzou history, Joe. One of the greatest Mizzou tournament games of all time, Missouri tournament games. I want to say that it was 1995. Mizzou played UCLA. UCLA was the number 1 overall seed in that tournament. And Mizzou was 9 or 10 seed. Mizzou had that game won. They were up by 1 point with 3.2 seconds left. About to knock off the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. Somehow, Tyus Edney, the point guard for UCLA, inbounded the ball underneath his own basket and somehow literally outraced everybody to the other end of the basket and put up a layup and won as the clock expired. Broke my heart. Still don't know how it happened, but that was one of the greatest Mizzou games in tournament history because it was just a back and forth battle in a game that they should have knocked off the number 1 overall. It
still kind of stings, doesn't it? I mean, even though it's one of the greatest games in Mizzou history, doesn't that kind of sting for you? Still, I mean, even though it was that long ago?
It does, because that year was coming off the year that the Mizzou knocked out in the Elite 8. So it was back-to-back years. They got knocked out in the Elite 8 the year before that by Arizona and Lute Olson in Arizona. And then they came back and to lose this game to Steve Alford and UCLA in the fashion that it did. It was tough. And as a kid, growing up a Mizzou fan, NCAA tournament broke my heart quite a few times from the time I was 8 or 9 till I was about 13 or 14 because they had some heartbreakers in the NCAA tournament, and some of them against some teams that they never should have lost to with buzzer beaters. So Mizzou in the NCAA AA tournament definitely has some bad memories for Tiger fans.
Well, and Scott, tell me, what were your feelings going into those tournaments? I mean, after a while, he had to know we're not going to do anything in this tournament. We're not going to go far in this tournament. Was that your mindset, or were you always like, this is the team? This is the team that's going to do it?
I mean, there were different years where you had different thoughts. Like I said, the team that Arizona knocked out in the Elite 8, that team you thought was going to win the whole tournament. I really did. That team went through the Big 12. They didn't lose a game in conference play. They won the whole conference. Went 14-0 in conference play that year. They made it to the conference tournament championship game. Finally lost that, but they were 24-4. And then they went through the tournament and made it to the Elite 8, and then they had foul trouble in that game against Arizona. But that one was really hard. Quinn Snyder got him to the Elite 8 in 2011, I think it was. That team had a really good run, and then kind of the same thing, just had heartbreak in the Elite 8. But, it's a program, like I said, they've also had games where they lost to God, who was that? Winthrop State or something like that. Mizzou was the 4 seed, and they were the 12 seed and got beat on a buzzer beater in the first round. Just stuff like that where you thought you had a good team and you were going to make a run, and then you get knocked out by one of those super low seeds, one of those major upsets. That's happened a few times. like I said, Mizzou's history in the NCAA tournaments, especially since Norm Stewart retired, has not been the greatest.
So basically, Scott, it's like the Chicago Cubs every season before 2016.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, the heartbreak part of it. I mean,
that's where I was going with it.
They weren't horrible like the Cubs were every year.
No, but the heartbreak.
16. Yeah, there were definitely those moments because there have been some really good players that have come out of that Mizzou program.
Yeah, that's for sure. Any tournament news, Scott, before we get going to our next topic?
No, that's the big one. The kid out at Oklahoma. It sounds like Kansas is going to the Kansas game is going to be really interesting to watch because it sounds like they're going to be without a couple of kids in their games too. They haven't announced what players are eligible and what players aren't after they had to drop out of the Big 12 tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see how full of a roster Kansas has as they make their run. So that'll be something to really watch. And Virginia as well. Since Virginia had to pull out, we're not exactly sure how many kids have traveled for the Virginia team to Indianapolis. So those are going to be the teams that are going to be really interesting to watch to see how healthy they are and how stacked their bench is going into these games.
Yeah, it's gut check time for every team in the NCAA that is in this tournament. It's going to be fun to watch. Quick update on the Blues game. The Blues are losing 2-0 in the first period. 3-0 in the first period. I almost, I was excited about going to watch this game after. What the hell is going on with this team, man? We talk about all the time, Scott, how this team, organizational depth, they'll be fine. Tread water. This team can't tread water at this point. And then you have your number one goaltender in Jordan Bennington, which, by the way, signed a $36 million extension, shitting the bed. I mean, this is not looking good for the Blues right now. They're losing to a team that's right behind them. Granted, there's 4 points separating them and the LA Kings. But, Scott, this is getting scary here, man.
Okay, before you sink the ship and go find the panic bus, just remember a week ago, it wasn't even a week ago, we were talking about the road trip they came off of, that they were 4-0-2, and everybody was so excited about the Blues and what an amazing job they've done. So now they've lost 2 games, one of them in overtime, and they're not playing very well today, and now you're ready to panic again. No, you're panicking. You just told me you were panicking.
Yeah, I'm panicking. I will say this. You have Tyler Bozak back today, and you have Jaden Schwartz getting back Friday. So that's good news on that front. At least they're getting healthy. The goaltending is an issue, though. I mean, you need your goaltenders to step up, and right now it's not happening. And also your defense. Without Colton Parayko, this defense is lost. I don't know what it is. They're lost.
But again, and we've talked about this, it's a whole new defensive system.
Yeah.
And your two best defensive players from the last couple of years aren't there. Petro's in Vegas, and Colton Parayko, who is supposed to be the guy who solidified this defense and slid into that spot, has been hurt all year. So you've got that going on, and then you've got a couple of new guys on defense, and you're bringing kids up, and you don't have that stabilizing force. And so the defense has just never been able to settle in and be able to play the style with the leadership that you want. And again, like we've talked about, you just have to hope that they can keep it together as much as possible until you get Parayko back, which, I heard today now may not be till the end of April. So, they just got to find a way to get through it. I know it's not going to be easy, and you're going to panic every time they lose. Every time they win, you're going to be really high, and every time they lose, the season's over and the sky might be falling. But you just got to try to control your emotions, man, because it's still a long road to go.
Still a long road to go, but, I just like it to be a little bit easier than what it is. I mean, you have the top 3 teams being the Blues, Vegas, and Colorado, and then everyone else. The one team that surprised me, though, I don't know if you've seen anything from this team or watch highlights or anything. The Minnesota Wild are one hot team.
Yeah, I've seen some Wild. They've played well. They have definitely played well.
I've been watching this young kid, Kirill Kaprizov. the big rookie they have in Minnesota, and he kind of reminds me a lot of Vladimir Tarasenko when he first came up. Do you see those comparisons a little bit?
I can see it a little bit. Similar style, similar body size. I can see the comparison.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting when we face the Minnesota Wild. You know, the Blues have not faced Minnesota at all this season yet.
Well, they'll get lots of it here coming up.
Oh, that's for sure. It's gonna be fun with the Wild. That's for sure. Coming up here on Crunch Time. Coming up here in Crunch Time, we're going to talk some Cardinal baseball, and the Cardinals were in action today. We'll talk to you about that right after this on Crunch Time.
Hey Crunch Time fans, my name is Graham Forsyth. I'm the host of Coffee with Graham and the Prospect Show on ASTV Productions. On Coffee with Graham, I talk to athletes, coaches, and whoever else involved in the amateur sports scene in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And on the Prospect Show, I talk to the best young hockey prospects from around North America. You can catch all the coverage on ASTV Productions. You can catch Coffee with Graham on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And for the Prospect Show, that show airs every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time. Hope to see you there. Have a good one.
Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Joe alongside Scott. The Cardinals played a game today, and the one thing I didn't care about the final score in this one. I mean, I'll get to the Major League Baseball scoreboard here in a minute. But the one thing that stood out to me, Scott, is the fact that Paul Goldschmidt hit his first home run in spring. Paul Goldschmidt, in my mind, has kind of gone under the radar. He hasn't looked really that good in spring. But then again, I know it's spring, Scott. It's just this seems kind of odd for Paul Goldschmidt. Are you at all worried about Paul Goldschmidt?
Not one single bit am I worried about Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt is a potential Hall of Famer. The guy knows what he needs to do to get ready for opening day. He's out there taking batting practice. He's hitting the ball. He's trying to hit the ball to the opposite field. And I know everybody wants to worry about home runs and who's got home runs. And, I know that's the big thing. But you got to remember that ballpark in Jupiter might be the hardest ballpark of any spring training stadium to hit the ball out of. Because most days the wind's blowing in or swirling in at 10 to 15 miles an hour. And it's just not an easy place to hit. And if you don't believe me, go look at the minor league coast league that actually plays their games there, and look at some of the batting averages and the power numbers that those kids put up because they have to play in that stadium every day all year long. But no, I'm not worried about Paul. He's hitting the ball hard. He's doing what he needs to do. It's nice to get that first home run, but I have no concerns. You know what stuck out to me today, Joe? The ageless wonder. I'm pretty starting to think he's not a human being. I'm starting to think he's a cyborg. Adam Wainwright goes on the mound. 5 innings, no runs, no hits. He still hasn't given up a run this spring. Struck out 4. I mean, the guy is just unbelievable.
Yeah, he is. The ability to pitch and the ability to pitch with age. That's what I like. Adam Wainwright at 38 years old, 39 years old, still pitching like a 25-year-old. And yes, 25-year-old, let me rephrase that. A 25-year-old without velocity in terms of 95, 96, 97. He's learned how to pitch. He's learned how to pitch well, and it's fun to watch, man. Does he have the best curveball that you've ever seen, Scott? Maybe not ever seen, but seen in the last 10, 15 years?
It's up there.
It's up there. It's up there. I'll give you 2 that were better. I mean, Uncle Charlie, as Adam likes to call it, is really, really good. I'm never going to take that away from you. And Carlos Beltran will attest to how good that thing is. Just go back and watch the playoffs in 2006 and watch Adam freezing with the Uncle Charlie. But the two best that I've seen from a Cardinal pitcher, one of them, God rest his soul, was Darryl Kyle. The other one came from Rick Ankiel. Rick Ankiel had the nastiest curveball I've ever seen.
Man, it's every time Rick Ankiel is brought up, man, I think of what could have been with Rick Ankiel. I was watching – you ever watch Prime 9 on MLB Network? when they used to do those. You know, they talked about the prime 9, what could have been, and number 9 was Rick Ankiel.
Well,
and how good his arm was.
I mean, you think about that. I just told you he had the best curveball that I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Put that with the fact that he was throwing 97, 98 with a fastball, and he was left-handed on top of it. I mean, he was almost unhittable that rookie year. He really was. I mean, it was electric when he went out and pitched because you just didn't know what you were going to see. And then on top of that, he may come up to the plate and hit a home run because he hit like 4 of them his rookie year. So, you know, he had the world by the tail, you know, that rookie season. And it's just an absolute shame what happened to him in the postseason and how that all played out, because you really wonder how good, how dominant he could have been. And how many more championships do the Cardinals win during that run if, you know, during those years that you had Darryl Kyle and Matt Morris and Woody Williams and then Chris Carpenter and Adam Wainwright? What if you had Rick Ankiel in the middle of that, left-handed, doing what he did? You know, I mean, you might have won another World Series or two. He was that dominant. So those two would be the top, but Adam is right there.
Another couple that I saw on there, which, by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, they're on YouTube. Just look up Prime 9 or MLB Network Prime 9 on YouTube. That's always fun to watch some of those old episodes. The other two that I, you know, was baffled by was Ray Fossey, of course. You had Ray Fossey, and then you had J.R. Richard. Talk about those two guys. J.R. Richard pitched an entire perfect game on LSD. I mean, it's unheard of.
Well, back then it wasn't. But, yeah, not having a chance to see either one of those guys in person way before my time, but they were both super talented pitchers. Yeah, J.R. Richards had about as nastiest stuff as anybody during his time in baseball. And Fossey was really good. I mean, we've seen some amazing pitchers come through and some guys that have had issues. And we've had guys come up that, you know, have had issues and stuff just couldn't work out because of injuries or whatever. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of really great players that we didn't get to see them really show off their talents at full capacity because something happened or they had an injury. You know, and I mean, again, I talk about it all the time, but we talk about the greatest baseball players you ever saw. If not for just a horrendous hip injury in an NFL in an NFL game in Seattle in January of 1991.
Bo Jackson could have been the best baseball player of all time.
He would have been in there. I mean, there wasn't much Bo couldn't do. I mean, he was unbelievable. And the fact that he could do it on a baseball field and then go fly off and do it on a football field and come back. I mean, you know, he was just a freak of nature, you know, from the power that he had to the speed and the arm. He could throw like crazy too. And then when he was really mad, he could just take his bat and shatter it over his calf, over his thigh, like it was a toothpick and walk away. You know, that was one of the most impressive things. First time Bo did that, struck out and just grabbed that bat and took it and just jacked it over his knee. And I mean, it broke into like toothpicks.
Two things when I think of Bo Jackson. One, running up the wall, which I'd never seen a human being do that ever after him. And then Bo Jackson, the 1989 All-Star game, hits a home run leading. It wasn't a leadoff home run. He was hitting second. First pitch he sees goes over the wall. I can still hear the call. Bo Jackson says hello. You know, just things like that just stick into my mind. Scott, do you think he'd be a better, let's say he was healthy, would he be a better baseball player or football player? You say he could do it all, but
he would have had to. He was great at both. You know, no player ever is going to have an All-Star game appearance and a Pro Bowl appearance in the same year. It'll never happen again. Mm-hmm. Which one would he have been better at?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Probably baseball because his career would have been longer, more than likely. because he could have moved, when his legs gave out a little bit, he could have moved to the DH in Kansas City. But yeah, he hit some monster home runs. And I remember that All-Star game. The crazy thing, the All-Star game that you're talking about that he hit the home run, Vin Scully was calling the game, and they had a special guest. President Reagan was in the broadcast booth calling that home run that Jackson hit and was talking about Bo Jackson while he was hitting that home run. So that's one of those memories that stands out. And then he made a wall-climbing catch in that game as well, later in the game.
Scott, was that Reagan that said, Bo Jackson says hello? Or was that Scully?
That was Scully.
That was an unbelievable call. That's one of the most underrated calls in baseball history right there. I mean, Bo Jackson was out of this world nuts. And I feel like if he would have picked up a third sport, like maybe track and field, he would have been good at that too, because he could run.
He could. And then he made the best commercials. He kind of created those sports commercials before there was, I want to be like Mike, everything was Bo knows. Those were all the Nike commercials, Bo knows. And he was everywhere. He was the big sports media icon before Michael.
Yeah, man, he tried to make a comeback with the White Sox, I think, and it wasn't good. The two, what was it, one hip replacement?
He had two.
Yeah, you could. I was watching some highlights of his attempted comeback, and yeah, he couldn't run anymore. So I get it. Wow, what a player he was. Speaking of the entire Major League Baseball scoreboard, I mean, you had a lot of games today, and I think I'm going to start paying attention way more to other teams as we get closer to opening day. At the end of 4, the Diamondbacks and the Rangers have beaten the Diamondbacks by the score of 3-0. The Reds and Indians are playing in the third or entering the 4th inning with the Indians leading 2-0. You have the Cubs and Padres playing. The Cubs are winning 4-2. Angels and Mariners. Angels winning 3-0. Hopefully, let's talk about that team real quick, Scott. I know we're going to do our previews and everything, but do you think that team can make a playoff run in Albert's potential final year? I mean, that division is wide open now.
I don't think they have enough pitching. And Albert, interestingly enough, was on 101 today for about 20 minutes talking to Brad Thompson. He doesn't sound like a guy who's retiring at the end of the year. I'll tell you that much.
Maybe he may come back here for one more year.
You never know. But I think for sure, if he gets close to 700, if he finishes this season within striking distance of 700 home runs, I believe he'll come back next year to become only the 4th guy to get to that mark. So I think there's a very good chance he comes back and plays. But going back to your initial point, no, I don't think the Angels have enough pitching. And, yeah, I just don't like that roster construction. I don't see them winning. I think Oakland wins that division.
I think Oakland wins that division as it single-handedly because you still have that Houston team who their young pitching emerged last year. But we'll get to our previews. But, Scott, I think you got to watch out for Houston.
Well, you got to remember that Houston's 2 top pitching prospects both had Tommy John and are done for the year. That's why they signed Jake Odorizzi.
Yeah, but were those 2 guys up last year when they made their run to the ALCS?
The one kid was their ace last year, yeah. So
yeah,
and the other kid they were counting on. So yeah, they were big parts of that rotation. And you don't know when Justin Verlander's coming back.
You really don't, and that's the scary thing. The Red Sox beat the Twins 9-1. You had the Phillies beating the Tigers 2-0. Marlins just eked out a win. They beat the Mets 3-2. Rays and Pirates. Rays win a close one here, 10-9. Blue Jays lose to the Yankees by a final of 1-0. The Dodgers beat the White Sox 4-3. Giants beat the Rockies 11-8. Cardinals and Astros tie at 4. Scott, can we get rid of the ties? My gosh, what do the Cardinals have, like 4 now?
Yeah, but again, I mean, spring training doesn't mean
training.
you're just getting guys out there to get work. I don't care about that.
Yeah. So the Athletics beat the Royals by a final of 10-5, and the Orioles beat the Braves 5-2. Or no, Orioles beat the Braves 5-2. I thought I was hallucinating there for a second, but yeah, Scott, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens in baseball. There's still free agents unsigned. Maybe not the big free agents, but do you think some of these guys will find jobs soon?
I think a lot of the guys that are still out there are guys that'll find jobs when there's an injury somewhere. Maybe not even breaking camp with the team. It may be something that happens in April or something like that. But yeah, I would imagine that at some point a guy like Rick Porcello will make an appearance on a team somewhere. I would imagine Cole Hamels, somebody will need him at some point. A guy that I'm really surprised isn't signed, and it was somebody that I thought if the Cardinals needed a left-handed bat would be an interesting guy because he's got some pop, plus he's always been able to get on base, and he's been on a lot of winning teams. I wouldn't have minded seeing the Cardinals give Josh Reddick a shot to be that role player for them. I think that would have been a nice move, honestly.
I think it would have been a nice move as well. Also, a guy like Jay Bruce, I know he may or may not have signed somewhere, but that would have been another bat. You'd think the Cardinals would have been a little more proactive. I think they're a little too right-handed heavy right now in their lineup. So, your only left-handed hitter really is Tom? Well, you have two switch hitters. You don't have a true left-handed hitter. So,
you'll have you'd have a left-handed hitter if Matt Carpenter's playing or if Justin Williams is playing. Otherwise, you've got Edman and Carlson as your switches.
Yeah. So, man, how would you construct this lineup, Scott? I wanted to ask Claiborne this when we had him on, but now that you've seen a little bit more spring training, how would you put this lineup together?
How would I put the lineup together?
Yes.
For me, my lineup would be Edman, Carlson 1-2, Goldie Arenado 3-4, DeYoung 5, Yachty 6, Tyler O'Neill 7, Harrison Bader 8. That's the way I would do it.
Would you entertain flip-flopping Tyler O'Neill and Yadier Molina?
No,
especially the way he's been hitting his spring.
No, and here's why. I like the idea of having I like the idea of having the on-base contact guy and Yachty in between those two guys that are power swing and miss type guys. So I like having the possibility of having Yachty on base in between those two guys to get on base and maybe get a 2-run homer and get a little more bang out of your buck potentially.
Yeah, I can see that. We'll dive into that more as we get into next week because next week we'll be doing our predictions for each division. It's going to be a lot of fun. Quickly before we get out of here, there's something that's been on my mind here. Why is it in hockey when, you have these shootouts, right, and goals are scored, how come they don't count as goals? How come they don't count as goals for some of these players?
I don't understand that rule. That's a weird rule, I guess. And I hadn't even thought about it. I guess I didn't even realize that hockey did that they don't count that. But I guess you'd have to ask that. I guess that would be the same question as why in baseball, if you have the bases loaded and the guy hits a walk-off grand slam, does he only get credited for 1 run?
Wait, that's a rule?
Yeah, if you hit a grand slam in baseball, like a tied game and extra innings, and if you hit a grand slam, walk-off grand slam, they only give you one RBI. You only get that winning run. The other 3 runs, you don't get those RBIs.
So you get credited for the grand slam, but not the other 3 RBIs.
But you get credit. I mean, it is a grand slam, but no, you get credited for a home run and an RBI.
That's so dumb, man. I don't understand.
Sorry, and it's like that. And it's not just the grand slam. Say you've got runners on second and third, and you hit a double, and it's a walk-off. Both of those runs score, that second run doesn't count. They only give you that first run.
Yeah, I just find it funny, though, Scott, that in the NHL, you have, overtime goals counting as goals, but shootout goals count for diddly squat. That makes no sense to me.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's kind of the same thing. How do you hit a 4-run homer and only get credit for one of those runs, or a 3-run double and get credit for one of those runs?
Yeah, maybe it's a question I'll have to ask Wags whenever he's on again. I'll ask him why these shootout goals don't count and what he thinks of the rule. But it's been a great show tonight. Thank you guys for watching at home. Alongside Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. Be good to one another. Stay safe out there. Have a good one. We will see you guys tomorrow night.